It is 3 a.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in Bangkok, and 4 on a Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. You're watching ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. We begin with the latest on the prosecution's probe into last month's ferry disaster that killed more than 300 people. Now, prosecutors and police entered a religious compound in Gyeonggi-do province at around noon today. That's roughly 4 hours ago, where the de facto owner of the second ferry operator was believed to be hiding out. For more on that, we're joined live by our Park Ji-won on the line. Ji-won.
Cardinal, prosecutors and police finally made their way into the religious compound in Anseong, Gyeonggi-do province about 4 hours ago to execute an arrest warrant for Yoo Byung-an, the practical owner of the Sewol-ho ferry operator. Hundreds of members of Yoo's religious cult who have been surrounding the estate for the past few days as human shields allowed only investigating prosecutors in. About 1,000 police have been deployed to the scene to keep the peace. Investigators searching for the 73-year-old Yoo inside the 230,000 square meter compound have seen no sign of him, and they suspect that he may be hiding elsewhere, like at the home of one of his believers. So they began zeroing in on the homes of his believers and are conducting undercover operations to find Yoo. Prosecutors are also trying to find evidence inside the compound in relation to criminal charges against the Yoo family, as they've been granted a search and seizure warrant. Wednesday's operation came after Yoo had ignored previous orders by prosecutors to show up for questioning over embezzlement, tax evasion, and malpractice charges. The authorities believe there may be some causal link there between the ferry operator's lack of investment in safety drills and personnel management.
Now, Ji-won, prosecutors are also executing an arrest warrant for Yoo's eldest son, Yoo Tae-gyun. Elaborate on that.
Yes, Kanyang. Prosecutors are also trying to arrest Yoo Tae-gyun, the first son of Yoo Byung-an, on charges of tax evasion and embezzlement of funds from company affiliates owned by the Yoo family. He was seen at Incheon International Airport buying a one-way ticket to France just 3 days after the ferry accident happened last month. However, he was already banned from travel by the authorities. He didn't get on board a plane. Since then, his whereabouts have been unknown. Regarding Yoo's other children staying in foreign countries who haven't responded to prosecutors' orders for questionings, the authorities are trying to get them extradited through cooperation with other countries.
All right, we will be keeping a close eye on that. Thank you, Ji-won. That was our Park Ji-won reporting on the latest developments on the prosecution's probe and investigation into the ferry operator. Now, moving on to the search efforts underway at the Sewol-ho ferry accident site. Rescue divers recovered one more body in the early hours of this Wednesday, pushing the confirmed death toll from the disaster to 288. 36 days has now passed since the accident, and 16 people remain unaccounted for. With weak tides expected this week, more than 100 military, Coast Guard, and civilian divers are on site for search operations, and they will focus mostly on the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th floors of the ship. President Park Geun-hye returned home earlier today from her 40-hour-long trip to the UAE, but it doesn't mean rest time for the president. She has no official schedule for the next couple of days, but she is expected to start the process of identifying a new prime minister and reshuffling her cabinet. ARIRANG's GeunHye has the details.
When President Park apologized this week for the government's poor response to the ferry disaster, she chose not to mention her plans to shake up the cabinet. But as she told the families of the victims late last week, follow-up measures to the accident, including a reshuffle, are expected to speed up in the coming days. Pundits are carefully looking at who will be the president's candidate for prime minister, with the current prime minister Chung Eui-won set to resign to take responsibility for the government's lax response to the ferry disaster. They say the appointment of a new prime minister will mark the starting point of the cabinet shakeup. Speculation is rife that the nomination of a new prime minister could come as early as this week, as it's already been almost a month since Chung offered to step down. Those held most responsible for the poor handling of the disaster, the ministers of Oceans and Fisheries, Public Administration, and Education, are most likely to face the chop, but there are growing calls for a clean sweep. Ruling and opposition party lawmakers are demanding the entire cabinet as well as senior officials at the presidential office step down. Pundits say President Park's new government lineup will affect how the public evaluates the sincerity of her apology and will play a key role in whether she wins back public sentiment. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
Just 2 weeks to go until Koreans head to the polls for the June 4th local elections. Recent polls suggest voters living in key regions are warming up to the main opposition party. Now, analysts say this could spell a big election day victory for the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, which was formed a mere 2 months ago. Our correspondent GeunHye reports on how last month's ferry disaster has given the momentum to the opposition party.
The effect of the government's poor handling of this Seoul ferry disaster is being reflected in recent polling, which shows that the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is gaining support in Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi-do province. According to a poll conducted this week by TNS Korea on more than 14,000 likely voters, the ruling Saenuri Party's candidate for Seoul Mayor, Chung Mong-jun, is more than 15 points behind incumbent Mayor Park Won-soon, who was at 51% support. It's a similar story in the city of Incheon, where the ruling party mayoral candidate Yoo Jong-bok is trailing incumbent Song Young-gil of the opposition party by more than 10 percentage points. The race for governor of Gyeonggi-do province is much tighter. Just 0.9 percentage points separates Saenuri candidate Nam Kyung-pil and opposition candidate Kim Jin-pyo in the TNS Korea polling. All three local races are considered significant on the national stage, as the three areas boast about half of Korea's total population. Earning victories in these races can give a party a full head of steam heading into future legislative and presidential elections. In other important local races, such as in the conservative stronghold city of Busan and in the liberal stronghold city of Gwangju, the polling fell more along party lines. According to a survey conducted by the National Election Commission last week, 55.8% of respondents said they would vote on election day, up 1 percentage point from the 2010 local elections. Campaigning is set to begin on Thursday, and public safety has emerged as the hot-button issue in light of April's ferry disaster. GeunHye, ARIRANG News.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Moon Gon-young. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
South Korean Cardinal Andrew Yum-soo-jung made history this Wednesday, becoming the first Korean Roman Catholic leader to cross the inter-Korean border into the north. He is currently at the Kaesong Industrial Complex meeting with South Korean Catholics there and touring the factory zone. ARIRANG News' Hwang Sung-hee joins me live from the inter-Korean border. Now, Sung-hee, the visit is somewhat unexpected. What prompted the trip?
Cardinal Andrew Yum-soo-jung's trip to the Kaesong Industrial Complex has been carefully planned over the last 3 to 4 months. However, it was only made public late last night. Now, like you said, he has become the first South Korean Roman Catholic leader to visit North Korea. Now, the trip does come amid escalating tensions on the peninsula, but the South Korean government said it was in no way political. In fact, his schedule for the day included a meeting with South Korean Catholics complex there, as well as a tour of the factory zone. And it hasn't been confirmed whether the Cardinal held Mass there today, but he has been very, very vocal about his desire to do so in the past. And in fact, he did have plans to hold Mass within the complex at last December, but that was scrapped at the very last minute following the execution of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle, Chang Sung-taek. Kanyang?
Sung-hee, the Cardinal's trip, in fact, comes 3 months before Pope Francis will travel to South Korea for a visit, and this is fueling speculation that the Holy Father could also make a stop in the north. How likely of a possibility is that?
That's right, Kanyang. Pope Francis will visit South Korea in August, and expectations are high on whether he will become the first pope to visit North Korea. Now, Pope Francis has shown a great deal of interest in bringing peace and reconciliation between the two Koreas, and he is expected to deliver a message to the entire Korean peninsula when he visits South Korea in the summer. However, for now, the South Korean Roman Catholic Church has denied these speculations and said that the Pope currently holds no plans to visit North Korea. Now, that could be one of the topics that discussed by the Cardinal when he returns and gives a press briefing here in less than an hour. So I will have more details on Cardinal Yam's trip in our later newscast. Kanyang?
All right, thank you, Sung-hee, for that. Now, more violence in Nigeria. This time, twin bomb attacks in Central City have killed at least 118, but authorities warn the toll could climb. Although no one has claimed responsibility just yet, the Islamist militant group Boko Haram yet again is being blamed for the blasts. ARIRANG's Yoo has more on the latest in a series of sustained attacks that's leaving the African nation reeling.
2 car bombs exploded in Nigeria's central city of Jos on Tuesday, killing at least 118 local civilians. One ripped through the center of a busy market, another half an hour later outside a nearby hospital, killing some rescue workers. A local official says the death toll could rise further as rescue teams continue to recover bodies from the smoldering debris. It's not yet clear who's responsible for the attack, but Boko Haram is the prime suspect. The militant group has been carrying out a series of bomb attacks across the center of Nigeria, trying to overthrow the government and create an Islamic state. If Boko Haram is to blame, Tuesday's double bomb blast would make it their deadliest single attack in 5 years. President Goodluck Jonathan issued a statement late Tuesday expressing sympathy for the victims and reassuring the public that the government remains committed to winning the war against terror. Terrorism in Nigeria has been under the international spotlight ever since Boko Haram kidnapped more than 200 schoolgirls back in mid-April. The girls who remain unaccounted for are reportedly being threatened to be auctioned off to become wives of militants. The campaign to get those girls back continues in Nigeria.
There is hope. There is a lot of hope. We believe the girls are safe. We believe the girls are alive. And we believe with the tremendous support the Nigerian military is getting, we believe that the girls will be rescued and returned home.
But fear is rising. As evident by this latest attack, Boko Haram is becoming increasingly vicious in their campaign for an Islamic state. More than 1,000 people are believed to have been killed by the militant group this year. Yoo, ARIRANG News.
And moving on to some economic news, the Korean government will spend an additional $7.6 billion by the end of next month to help boost the domestic demand hit by last month's Seoul ferry sinking. This came during a policy meeting with the ruling Saenuri Party Wednesday, where Finance Minister GeunHye said the move is part of government efforts to make sure the recovery of the domestic economy won't be derailed by the disaster. The government is also considering tax breaks and other financial support for the travel industry and domestic-oriented sectors that were badly affected by the tragedy. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund has given Korea's banking sector a vote of confidence. According to a stress test reported in its financial system stability assessment, the IMF says Korean banks are resilient to financial risks, citing improved capitalization in the sector following the financial crisis in 2008. However, the agency warned that the country's non-banking sector is increasingly vulnerable, saying it lacked preparedness to deal with risks. The IMF recommended stricter inspections to improve transparency and strengthen the monetary and criminal penalties in the financial sector. The report added that the nation's Financial Services Commission and Financial Supervisory Service needed to maintain political neutrality. Starting in July, Korean consumers will be able to use their online ID PIN number in the offline world. The Ministry of Security and Public Administration says it will introduce a new way of confirming a person's identity using so-called IPIN numbers instead of the current resident registration numbers, which are, of course, the equivalent of social security numbers in the U.S. The government's move comes on the heels of a revised bill regarding personal data protection that prohibits the collection and exploitation of resident registration numbers from August. The government came under intense fire earlier this year for the country's biggest ever personal data leak. Glaciers in the Antarctic are melting at irreversible rates, according to scientists, and that means serious trouble for life as we know it. A recent warning from a non-profit organization in the U.S. says Americans should enjoy their historical landmarks while they still can, as many may be unrecognizable or completely submerged underwater by the turn of the next century. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Rising sea levels, the erosion of coastal areas, increased instances of flooding, heavy rain, and more frequent wildfires all are damaging archaeological resources, historic buildings, and cultural landscapes across the United States. This was the warning issued by the nonprofit organization, the Union of Concerned Scientists, as it highlighted 30 historic American landmarks that are under serious threat from climate change. They include the Statue of Liberty, which the group says is at serious risk if sea levels rise 1 meter by the year 2100, as scientists predict. Jamestown, the first permanent English colony in Virginia, is also forecast to be completely inundated by the end of the century, while the Kennedy Space Center in Florida is also threatened. NASA had earlier said glaciers in the Antarctic are melting at an irreversible speed and forecast that the city of New York would be underwater within 200 years.
We passed the point of no return in this sector, and at this point, I would say it's just a matter of time before these glaciers completely disappear to sea.
In the western U.S., rising temperatures have led to an increase in wildfires, which are getting more severe and less predictable, posing a major threat to both human beings and wildlife. Some experts warn that this is merely the tip of the iceberg and that the human race should act quickly before it is too late. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Korea's mobile carriers have resumed full operations after having their business operations suspended 2 months ago. The Korea Communications Commission banned the carriers in turns from assigning on new subscribers for 45 days starting March 13th as punishment for providing illegal incentives to induce users to change service providers. So what are illegal subsidies and will new regulations prove effective? For analysis, we are joined live in the studio by our regular contributor, Dr. Kim Byung-ju. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Now, we hear about mobile phone subsidies all the time. We usually think, we know what it is, but then there are different. We hear there are different offers. We get lost. What is this subsidy that we're talking about?
Indeed, we do often get lost what this subsidy is all about, even though we are hearing about it all the time. This is a little bit complicated matter. Let's bring up a visual illustration that we have prepared so that I can explain it better. it's not like a straightforward subsidy that we can often think about because it has so many different components here. Basically, let's see the whole entire height of this visual, what do you call it, bar, if you will. That's the full cost for the mobile handset you would naturally expect to pay when you're saying, well, Samsung Galaxy phone or Apple iPhone is about 1 million won here in Korea. But it's not 1 million won you're paying upfront there because of these discounts that you're seeing, meaning subsidies. First one is the handset discount itself. The service provider themselves actually offer this discount, and you may wonder how they can do that. That's because they buy these handsets in bulk amounts. And what's unique in Korea is that when you deal with these service providers, you actually purchase the equipment through them. In other countries, they don't do that. Often it's all separated. You buy equipment and you choose subscription. But here in Korea, you go to the service provider and then you get the equipment. So they buy these handsets in bulk amounts so they can offer you this discount. And after that, what they do is carrier service contract discount, meaning that from the contract itself, the fact that you're signing up contract itself, they offer you extra discount. And then there is another one that's very interesting here in Korea as well. If you switch from a different service provider, you get extra discount.
Right, and we often get calls from different telecom providers suggesting that we should change providers.
Exactly. So what's happening is in that illustration we just saw, if the entire discount exceeds 270,000 won, that's illegal. And many of the service providers have been violating the rule. That's why their market operation have been in suspension for the past like 2 months, switching size and all. So what's happening here in Korea, the subsidy amount is so big, they're saying annually we are talking about 7 to 8 trillion won that these service providers are spending in the form of this subsidy themselves.
Now, as a consumer myself, we always welcome discounts. But what we're hearing is that the real reason for these subsidies are not for the consumer's benefits, but for actually market share competition. Right.
That's another complicated point. Let's bring up next, graph that we have prepared so that we can explain this better. They are competing, very fiercely here in Korea. That's because Korean market is totally saturated. We are talking about 55 million subscriptions here in Korea. That's exceeding our entire population. And if you set aside the age group of the population, like young kids, then means really this is a lot of phones we are talking about. And so this market is totally saturated, and within that, the market share, what you notice here in this graph, is that they have been staying rather stable. But the thing is, they have to really take away subscribers from the other camp, and they've been working on it. And one of the reasons why this is remaining so stable is because the subscribers have been switching back and forth. Right. They're not moving one direction, but they're moving all these different directions. So at the end of the story is that they're staying, the total amount stay the same, and the service providers continue to spend this money, believing that money is the best way to get extra subscribers. But funny ending at the end of the story here is that because they're switching sides, they're all the same. Exactly. That's what's happening.
So what is the mobile phone chaos that we are hearing about? I mean, is this some kind of a market-wide confusion?
Mobile chaos, 대란, that was the expression that we are using. And it's not exactly precise description of what's happening here in Korea. What it means here is that it's like sort of like what do you call it here in Korea? Guerrilla marketing, like things pops up. And what happens is, in a certain place, certain time, these service providers offer this deep discounts, outrageous amount of discounts. So sometimes you may run into friends who will claim that, well, I got this phone almost for free. And you may get angry, how come I didn't get that deal? Because that deal, by the time you find out, will be gone. So that is a real confusion that we see in the market, and the government has been very, very angry and not satisfied with what was happening, and they believe that's a illegal activity, because in this cases they're offering these kind of subsidies that are way below the limit.
Right. But, however, one way or another, for consumers, we believe lower prices are better.
Right.
And so why not let these businesses compete against one another so that we as consumers can get cheaper phones?
Obviously, you can say it, and I've been hearing many people saying that. The thing is, we are led to be, we've been tricked here. Let's bring up the first graph that we used earlier on. Let me tell you the story. The whole first graph that you saw, the total height of it, there is a possibility that they have been exaggerated, meaning that Korea's mobile phone makers may have been selling this, equipments at a high price that's unjustifiably higher, and service providers may be offering their services at a price that's unjustifiably high. So that's why they can pretend they're offering these subsidies, but they're not losing money. They're playing with possibly Korean mobile phone users' money here. So the question here is, the prices are too high. They should cut their prices in order to play the proper market game here, and that has to be the focus of action for the government down the road.
All right. Well, definitely mobile phones are very, very prominent here in Korea, especially, and it's a market that we need to keep a close eye on so that we don't get ripped off in the end.
Right,
All
that's
right.
right.
Dr. Kim Byung-ju, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
And that is your business today on this Wednesday. Thank you for watching, and do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.